Sean Woodroffe is the Chief People Officer at TIAA, a 100-year-old Fortune 100 financial services company that provides financial solutions for nonprofits. Thank you, Mr. Woodroffe. I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid-fire questions first. What words come to mind when you think of the word extrovert?
Words that come to mind, first of all, I should first preface my remarks by saying thank you for the opportunity for us to have this discussion. And I compliment you, Zubin, on exploring the juxtaposition between introversion and extroversion, and recognizing that in many instances, it does require special effort for an introvert to think about how they may adopt traits of extroversion, as it might serve to be a coping mechanism in certain work environments. So I think it's a very thoughtful endeavor on your part to explore that contrast between the two. So in terms of responding to your question, I think from an extroverted perspective, extroverts look as though people who are very comfortable in speaking up, very comfortable in extolling their virtues, very comfortable in coming into a room and meeting a person whom they have not previously met, but are very comfortable in engaging that new relationship. So I think those are some of the common traits that I think about as I think about extroversion in the context of the work environment in particular.
Thank you. And how about introverts?
Introverts are the ones in a meeting where if something is said, they don't feel that it's necessary to say it just because. So introverts tend to be people who speak only when they're in a public setting. They speak only when they think is absolutely necessary, and they prefer not to speak, so to speak. Introverts are people that are comfortable being by themselves, comfortable being introspective and deep in thought, and don't necessarily see the need to be around others for an extended period of time. And that's not a clinical definition. That's sort of my interpretation of one versus the other.
Thank you. And are you yourself an introvert, extrovert, or perhaps ambivert?
I am an introvert that masquerades as an extrovert when necessary.
And have you always been this as a child? And
I think, I am an only child. So I grew up as an only child. And you hear a lot of stories about only children who, some of whom seek attention because they don't have siblings, and other only children who are very happy being by themselves and didn't necessarily have a yearning to have a sibling. And I probably would consider myself to be among the latter versus the former.
Thank you. And what words come to mind when you think of diversity?
Well, words come to mind for me, diversity is embracing each other's differences and recognizing that, especially now, largely because of technology and how interconnected we are, the value of inclusion and equity, and recognizing the virtues of allowing every person to freely express a point of view without any fear of reprisals or consequences, recognizing that the ability to get the best outcome is based upon leveraging diversity of thought and thinking.
Thank you. And at TIAA, how does diversity of thought assist you in recruiting better talent And how do you make sure that all positions are diversely filled?
From a TIA perspective, diversity, equity, and inclusion are the hallmark of our institution. We believe deeply in attracting and retaining and cultivating a diverse workforce. We think it is important that our workforce represent the millions of clients that we serve, and we also see a lot of value in having a diverse workforce to get to the best strategic outcomes for the company on behalf of our clients.
Thank you. And at TIA, what sort of tools or what do you do to encourage participation of introverts in a setting?
Yeah, we talk about introversion versus extroversion at TIA very openly. We have training courses, both for individual contributors as well as people leaders, in terms of how associates can develop their presence, how they can find their voice, the opportunity to proactively engage in issues, seizing opportunities to express different point of views. So those are attributes and characteristics that are important to us as an organization.
Thank you. And as a leader, how do you think personality types affects leadership?
Yeah, I think personality types affects leadership in a very meaningful way. If you are a personality type where you are comfortable in receiving feedback, you're comfortable in giving feedback, you're comfortable in engendering an environment where people can freely express their opinions, I think that that's a leader that will have the impact of inspiring people around him or her to be their very best.
Thank you. And as an introvert that masquerades as an extrovert, do you have any helpful tips to give introverts who have to cope with an extroverted world?
I think just being conscious of how we engage people. So if you're in a meeting and a topic is being discussed and you have a strong point of view, but you would rather keep quiet, I think it's just compelling yourself to speak up, because speaking up could in fact make the difference, and it could shape that particular discussion point in a way that it may not be shaped if you didn't speak up.
Thank you. And thank you for your time and perspective, Mr. Woodroffe.
It is my pleasure, Mr. Mehta. Thank you very much for having me.